give you all when you're dancing on me. I wanna see if you can give me some more.
What is going on, you guys? Welcome to the HighLine Executives Podcast. We are in another season, another episode of season 2 on the HighLine Executives Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest with us. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on, man. My name is Kawser, at CEO Kawser. I'm the founder and CEO of Beige. We're building a media technology marketplace. So kind of think of us as like the Uber, but for videographers and photographers.
Nice, I like that, man. Cool. So tell me a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur and, you know, kind of how you got started, or did you start like working before this, or, you know, how did you start off?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm sure you ask a lot of people this question, and entrepreneurship is like one of the most non-linear paths, right? Because you have to overcome a lot in order to decide to be an entrepreneur. And then the moment you decide to be an entrepreneur, that's when all your challenges begin, right? So yeah, before starting Beige, I had a few other startups. I was involved in my family's small business. They had a few Indian restaurants throughout LA. I had a clothing startup. I had a social fitness app, all by the age of 18. And then that's when I realized, like, I gotta really focus on one thing and just go all in. And so I dropped out of school, went all in on Beige, and, you know, that's what I was fortunate enough to scale up.
Nice, interesting. And now starting off, we all have this thing called the valley of despair. You know, you start off and it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? You know, tell me about a little bit of the challenges that you faced when you kind of started up.
Yeah, definitely, man. I would say the biggest challenges were overcoming the objections of the people closest to me, right? Even like my own parents, they were like, you know, why aren't you gonna go the secure path? Like, we've always wanted to be a doctor or some sort of working professional, go the safe and stable and secure path. And so I was like, you know what, like, that's not really for me, and I want to be able to pave my own pathway to success. And so that's what I went for.
You know, it's crazy because a lot of people, they go through that same kind of problem where their parents are saying, no, like, just go get your degree, play it safe, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard all these stories about, you know, this and that, and it never worked out. You know, they either ended up in jail or this, or, you know. But anyway, so how did you kind of overcome that kind of struggle? Like, did you place yourself in a different environment, or, you know, what happened?
Yeah, man. So I would actually take these work retreats. There's an area about 2 hours outside of LA called Big Bear. It's like the forest and the mountains, this beautiful lake surrounding it. And I rented out this particular cabin, and I would just go on these thinking trips where I would pretty much just map out my vision and like lay out the next steps and just work. And that really helped me, isolating myself from the naysayers, from anyone that was trying to cloud my judgment, and help me get really clear on my priorities.
Yeah, makes sense. And so now, while you were starting this company, did you kind of do some of that like blueprinting while you were, you know, isolating yourself? Is that
yeah,
where it
definitely, definitely. You know, I mean, I think it started off with me isolating myself, but then when I came back from those trips, I gained a lot of clarity, right? And that's what allowed me to then realize, okay, if I want to build a company, I need the right people around me, right? So who do I know in my industry that does videography and photography? Who do I know that might be skilled at directing? Who do I know that's good at sales? And so I built a team around me of primarily my own friends. And you know, I got them invested in the vision, and I just got started. You know, I opened up the doors, and, you know, we just kind of went from there.
Nice. And, you know, that's the craziest part, is that, you know, starting off, we don't know what we're doing exactly, and we don't know if the actions that we're doing are going to take us to the right place, right?
We don't,
right? So you kind of just had to just test. Like, how long was your testing phase before you started to see your first check or your first deal?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that testing phase was, I would say, well over a year, where I was just, you know, experimenting. I was trying to figure out different strategies of getting a paying customer. And then I think the first few customers that we got would almost just felt serendipitous by luck, and then brought them in the door. And then I think, like, the first time we got a really big client, or at least at that time, I was like, wow, like this is that huge breakthrough moment. Like I needed this. You know, it was a customer that wanted to book us for like a series of e-commerce commercials in Hollywood Hills. And then like he sent me a photo of this beautiful mansion. I can send it to you for like editing the pod with like this beautiful Lambo and 8 Series in there. And then I was like, wow, like this guy's legit. And then the next thing you know, he PayPals me $5,000.
Wow.
And so I showed up to that shoot with like 20 of my friends that were just like helping me out, you know, even though they paid me for, you know, certain deliverable that didn't require that many people, you know. But one key thing is whenever you have an opportunity, you got to bring your best foot forward, and you have to always over deliver, right? So you never under promise and under deliver, or over promise and under deliver. You want to promise what you can realistically do, but then you want to over deliver on that promise.
Exactly, makes sense. And that's the thing, is that you basically give everything your best, right? Because if you see an opportunity and you don't see it, you know, right away, but it could be the opportunity of a lifetime, you just don't know it, and you put in half effort, then the universe is going to give that back to you, right?
100%.
Exactly. So now moving on from that, how did you kind of know that this was the right thing to get into? Starting off, like, did you have any other kind of ideas or hustles going on at the time, or was it just video editing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I had, you know, like I said, I had a clothing startup that I was working on. That built a lot of traction. We ended up, you know, with over 10,000 followers on social media.
Wow.
We had a successfully funded Kickstarter campaign that we raised money on. And then like, we just had so much of like a brand presence. I also had a fitness app that, you know, raised a little over $250,000 that I started with a few other UC Irvine MBA founders. But we ended up running out of money. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm trying out all these things simultaneously. What would happen if I went all in on Beige and just building this one startup to be what it is today? And that's what I did. I just went all in. So
that's crazy. So I like how it's different for you, you know, that you're basically creating a marketplace for people that need their videos edited.
So for videographers, people that need videography, photography, video editors, anything content related,
Wow. So give me a little bit of a rundown about if I'm one of your clients and I have a business and I need some commercials and I need some Instagram reels. How do we go
definitely. It's as easy as going on our website, beigevideo.com, submitting your requirements, and then our team matching you with one of our videographers.
Wow.
This all can happen with same day turnaround. So let's say you need someone like today in an hour in Chicago, you can consider it done with Beige. So our goal is to really streamline that process. And obviously building any startup, there's challenges. There's always like different issues that may arise, but the key thing is to just keep building and keep growing. And just remaining grounded, you know, do that.
I like that, man. And that's crazy. So I like the concept of this is I'm a business owner. I am not good at social media, right? I'm an older guy, whatever. And I come in and I'm like, oh shoot, social media is what basically runs the world now, right? Like everything is on social media. So I need a video done, boom. Go onto the website, put in my requirements, and I'll have somebody ready for me.
100%.
Wow.
Simple as that.
I've actually never heard of a business like that.
Thank you, man.
You know, because normally you got to go out and search, you got to go on Fiverr, then you got to vet them out to make sure that they're not like, you know, scammy or cheap. You know, and then it's like, it's a big headache to go and do that, you know?
100%.
So I see the convenience of it, you know?
Thank you.
And we always like to talk about on the podcast of like the whole concept of a solution and a problem. And this is like, it's already answered, you know? So we can skip that question. But, you know, moving on now, what are your next steps for this business? Where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, definitely. We were fortunate enough to grow by 3x just this year from last year. So really fortunate about that. The goal is to essentially 5x next year in growth at a minimum, and then, you know, keep 10xing every year and just eventually be the world's biggest videography and photography marketplace. Super excited about that. We're also launching our Beige app early next year. So it's everything that our clients can now do through our website, they're going to be able to do on our own app. And it's just a much more seamless experience. Dude,
awesome, man. Now, talk a little bit more about the starting the business side. So tell me a little bit about this quote. I've heard it says, mentality is 90% of the work, 10% of the work is the actual physical work that you're doing. Do you agree or do you disagree with that?
I think that's very true. Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, mindset is such an important thing that intentions are great, but persuading yourself to take an action, I think, is one of the most powerful things, right? And taking the right action, because you're always going to be tasked with so many things that, you know, maybe out of necessity or might be a distraction, but if you can control your mind and have the right mindset, regardless of the circumstances, that is 90% of the battle, right? Because the final 10% is actually initiating the action, right? For us to set our minds to connecting, and for you to have me on this podcast, that was 90% of the work, coordinating a schedule. I know we got to move around a few times, but then when we showed up here, now it's the fun part. It's that 10% of taking that action that we committed our minds to.
And it's like committing an hour, you know, just an hour, and then everything else, all the editing and like, that's all, you know, that's all the physical work, right? But the actual mentality work is sitting down and dialing down and, you know, thinking about the controversial topics, you know, the ideas that we're going to bounce off in the podcast, you know, like, and then before that is just getting yourself to be on camera in the first place, right? The most basic principle is that sometimes you just got to just get up and do it, you know, and that's why I always like to also say is do more, think less, you know, like the more you think about something, the less you're going to do it, right? Like
100%.
The more you're going to overthink it, and, you know, one of the biggest problems we have in today's society is like people their mind is crowded in a way because it's social media. Like it could be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, right? So tell me a little bit about what you think about how social media can be bad and how can we make the most out of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, social media gets a lot of bad rep because a lot of people just hop on there to consume, right? And you're consuming, you know, other people's knowledge and ideas, which is great to do, right? But then if you're not creating anything with that, then it's almost a counterproductive experience. So my philosophy on social media is hop on social media to gain inspiration and then create, right? So for every hour of social media that someone is consuming, you got to spend at least 3 hours creating. And so as long as you have that proportion, I think social media could be a great tool. But if you're just doom scrolling, you're constantly comparing your level 5 to someone else's level 100, it's just a distraction at the end of the day, right? So it's really about how you use it, how you garner self-control, and how you are able to draw and extract inspiration and then put it into action. That's the hardest part. A lot of people can feel inspired momentarily, but for them to translate that into productive action is like the hardest part, you know, and everyone struggles with that.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I did a podcast with an elder gentleman. He's like maybe 70, 80 probably. Okay. And he used to say that back in the day, the form of entertainment was podcast, where he'd see a lot of his friends where they just, it's called like they get mental masturbation from what they're listening to, because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm motivated, right? But then they'd go back and do the same stuff and just do nothing with it, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it could work against you, and it worked against them because they just got so hooked on like that dopamine hit of like, oh my God, like let's go. And for a day or two they're motivated, but they're not applying any of that information to their actual lives. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, that can set you back because you're just crowding your mind with information that you're not using, right? And so, but anyways, but where I was going with that was it leads to people not focusing on one idea, right? Like how you said with your story, you dialed down and you went with this one idea and you focused on it, right? And how did you know that this was going to be the right thing to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know, right? I mean, it's really just trusting your gut. I'm a big believer in the power of your intuition, but then taking action and keeping that same vision regardless of any adversity, right? So I've been knocked down hundreds of times, right? I've had hundreds of bad days in my business. But did that mean that I would just give up? No, because this is something I truly believe in and I have fun doing it, right? So if you find something that you're passionate about, that helps other people, that solves a real problem, that makes you money, regardless of how many times you get knocked down, you got to just keep going. And it's not about whether you know if it's the right decision or not, because my mom has this saying, it's one of my favorite quotes, but time will unveil everything, right? So time will communicate whether it was the right decision or not.
Yeah.
But all that you can do is keep moving forward.
Just keep going. Like God has that, and you know, not even bring God into this, but God has, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, has your will written for you, right? And if it's written for you to go and make $1 million tomorrow, but you're sitting at home not trying, thinking that it's going to come to you, you know, how are you going to get it, right? So what do you like? Do you believe in that concept of showing up every day with 100% of your effort and you know, taking the risk now, or do you believe in like having balance or moderation?
I think you got to go all in on anything and everything that you want to pursue in this life. You only get one life. But every day is another chance, another opportunity for you to change the course and trajectory for your life, hopefully for the better. So I'm a big believer of just going all in and scaling and expanding and creating as much value as possible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I respect that, because a lot of people are like, oh, you need to have a little bit of balance or, you know, moderation, in which I also believe is true, but not at the point if you're trying to start up a business and you can't balance your 9 to 5 and the business, you got to go all in, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Or
100%.
Or do you think otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have stability. So if you're planning on quitting your 9 to 5 to go all in on a business, definitely have some sort of reserve, some sort of capital, right? So you're not like couch surfing or in an undesirable, you know, environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moment you have a small cushion, my advice is like at least a couple months, 2-3 months of a cushion. Just go all in and give yourself 60 or 90 days to go all in on this business. Set clear milestones and then go and crush them. Exactly. To the point where you never have to think about getting another job, right? My last real jobs were at like Chick-fil-A and Uniqlo. Really? And surprisingly, I believe I was like 19 at the time. And surprisingly, I didn't last more than a month at either job, because while I was on the clock getting paid $15 an hour in Santa Monica and in Culver City, California, I literally was thinking and dreaming of my business the entire time. We were given these little notebooks at Uniqlo, which is a clothing retailer for those that you don't know. We were given these notebooks at Uniqlo, and I would literally write out business ideas instead of taking notes of the workplace. And you know, they caught on to me, and so before I could get fired from Uniqlo or Chick-fil-A, I decided to quit, you know, and that was around the same time I decided to drop out of school, and then I just went all in on my business.
Yeah. You're like, the universe was kind of telling you like, yo, this is not working, this is not working. The only thing left is that, right?
Yeah. You gotta just go all in on one thing. That's probably like one of my greatest advice that I could give to an entrepreneur. Go all in on one thing, crush it, and then you can diversify and be a conglomerate. But if you want to think of it as a series of cups, right? You'd rather have one glass that's full that you can drink from and be satiated than have to drink 10 different cups that are only 10% full.
Damn. Deep. No, that's right. I like how you said that. Now let's kind of redirect the conversation a little bit. Now coming up, did you have a good amount of friends around you that you had to make the hard decision of like cutting off, or do you still have your OG friends around you? You know, tell me a little bit about that, because I know that we all have that one high school friend that like we truly care about, but they just carry some some bad habits or some bad energy around them. You know, and it's like, it's the hard decision of saying like, damn, I love you, bro, but I kind of gotta, distance myself.
Definitely. I mean, you know what? I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of great people throughout the way, throughout the journey. I would say my circle is pretty small, but my network is large, right? So there have been people that I've had to cut off. Maybe they have certain habits that I don't resonate with. Like for example, like I don't drink, smoke, or do drugs. So it's hard for me to partake in those activities or in those environments where that's happening, right? I have friends that drink and that might consume drugs, but I'm not partaking in those activities with them because it's just not something I do. Wow. However, at the same time, I do have certain childhood best friends that we both came up and we both like kind of went in our own separate paths, but now that we're reunited, we're like both super successful. So that's also been nice, having friends that you can relate to that are also crushing it in the business world, that are disciplined. So yeah, man, I'm just excited to meet other fellow entrepreneurs like yourself and that are also crushing it, and like just keep meeting people, keep networking, and be conscious of like my environment, right? Because our environment, I think, is one of the most important keys to success.
Exactly. And with that being said, what has been the most like fascinating thing that you've learned about people?
That's a deep one.
It is, man. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, human beings respond to incentives, right? So it's okay to think about your own best interest and to have that in mind. But whenever you want someone to do something for you, you have to think about what it is that drives and fuels them. I think that's one of the most profound realizations I've had about human psychology.
Yeah.
People respond to incentives. So incentivize them to get your desired outcome, but that's also a win-win for them.
Yeah.
I'm also a big believer in win-win scenarios. Everyone can win, everyone can eat. It doesn't have to be a win-lose. And for me, it's not about competition, it's really about collaboration, There might be like the biggest competitor out there that's trying to take all my business and that wants to ruin me. But I'm not thinking about how I can destroy them. I'm thinking about, okay, how can I create value for them?
Exactly.
I'm not thinking about how can I extract value for them.
Yeah.
Because the more value that we create as an individual, as a company, as a group, the better the world's going to be. And I'm here to change the world, not to compete over, you know what I mean?
Yeah, some small
finite things.
Yeah. And it's crazy that you say that because the way that usually that psychologically that people think is that, I'm going to move around and, like you said, incentivize myself. They're selfish people, it's like, I'm going to do what's best for myself, right? But it's very rare that you find somebody that, that actually will look for the best interest of others in a way, and that's it's a beautiful thing. Now, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about character, right? How important was it for you to build your character as an individual, and how has that contributed to your business?
Man, character is everything, and I didn't realize this when I was younger, right?
Oh, yeah.
But when you think about it, like. There's two quotes I have for you, right? Two of the most profound quotes that I live by. And I kind of repeat this on every podcast. It's interesting. It always comes up. But one is humility is the key to success. And the other is submission is the key to the universe, right? Let me explain. So with humility, a lot of people that achieve some sort of success, some sort of accolade, some sort of material object, whatever it is, right? They tend to become arrogant because they forget what it took for them to get there, right? And so it's really important to remain humble and to have that beginner's mindset, because life is a series of mountains. Once you achieve your dream car or your dream spouse or your dream business or whatever it is, you're merely going to be at the top of that specific mountain, only to find yourself at the bottom of the next mountain. So you just got to keep climbing and keep going and remain humble through the process, so you don't make arrogant and reckless decisions and actions, And that's one key reason why I've committed to not drinking or doing drugs, because they have a tendency to influence your judgment and to make you arrogant, right? And so that's that first one. The second one about submission being the key to success. I'm a devout Muslim. And so, growing up, my religion was just really always imposed on me by my hyper-religious immigrant parents, right? And it was truly when I sought out God and my faith myself that I realized that the more I submit to God, the more He will grant me. And so that's where I get submission is the key to the universe, because you submit to God, you submit to your purpose, to anything and everything that you want to achieve. In exchange, you're going to be granted the key to the universe.
Yeah.
And it starts with your faith, right? So I definitely, those are two quotes that I live by, man.
Makes sense. And it's crazy that you say that, because as youngsters, we always get distracted and whatnot, and we kind of go our little ways. But when you realize that you fear nothing in the world but God, you almost become like a super powerful man. Like you feel that different level of confidence, to where that you can go and attack something, and whatever happens, you'll be fine, you'll be alive, And I feel like that kind of mindset that any religion really could teach you is that it gives you that kind of purpose. You have a purpose of why you're doing these things, right? And that's why I feel like people go down the drug path or down the alcohol path, because they feel like they're missing something out of life. Like they don't have that fulfillment. you know. So people will go and search for all this fulfillment all their life and never find anything, you know. So would you say that you kind of developed a little bit of your discipline through the teachings of your religion, like growing up?
Yeah, totally. I would say that played a big role. I think my parents really taught me a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, things like working out, and just also starting a business at a very early age. You know, it's like,
oh yeah, because you said they did start a bunch of businesses.
Yeah, my parents had some businesses that, you know, I would also help out with, and it's like, the moment you put yourself in the business world, like, it doesn't matter what age you are. Yeah. If you're offering a good and a service and you don't deliver on it, the world is going to hold you accountable, and it has every right to do so. And so that takes a lot of integrity, takes a lot of character, and a lot of discipline to do right by the people that are working for you, the people that are fueling your business with their purchasing dollars. And so my goal as an entrepreneur is to add as much value as possible and to never make someone feel like they didn't receive that equal reciprocal in return.
Exactly. Know? Yeah, no, it makes sense. And man, it's crazy that you've learned all this stuff and you're very good at communicating it as well. Did you read any like books or anything, or do you listen to any like podcasts or? Yeah,
I love listening to podcasts. I love, you know, entrepreneurs like PBD, Tom Bilyeu, who I had the pleasure of meeting in LA a couple months back.
No way.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. Dope, yeah, I ran into Tom at a event that we were at. His wife was actually speaking. And then, yeah, I just went up to him and I was like, hey man, like, I love your stuff. What advice do you have for me? And he essentially told me that you just can't look back. You just got to keep going all in. And he was like, Quest Nutrition, I didn't just sell it overnight for multi-billions of dollars. I literally put in my blood, sweat, and tears for over a decade in order to get it to this point. I've sacrificed countless date nights. I've sacrificed so much in order to reap this return. So you just can't look back. And that was some profound advice. I really look up to Tony Zhu, who's a self-made billionaire, co-founder of DoorDash. Had the pleasure of meeting him.
Wow.
Who gave me some great advice as well. Some books, I would say, I really like Principles by Ray Dalio. That's a really good one. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a classic. Let's see, I'll give you another one. Atomic Habits as well.
Oh yeah.
It's a good one.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend those.
Makes sense, man. And man, it's crazy that you meet these people. You know, it's just like people like to put things on a pedestal in a way, right? And tell me a little about the interaction that you've met about these guys. You know, we say that, you know, you got to be absolutely insane to attain that level of success or millions, right? But when you talk to these people, you know, they're like, it's so realistic. Like that could be you, you know, like they're normal people, right?
Yeah,
it's almost like
totally
right. So tell me a little bit about the things that you've realized when you talk to these people that are at the next level.
Definitely. I mean, the first thing is they're extremely humble. Like you wouldn't even know that they're as wealthy or as successful as they are. So the way that they carry themselves is in the most humble of ways. But they're also very smart and intelligent, right? And that's why I'm a big believer in constantly acquiring knowledge through formal education, experiences, and whatever else. But another key denominator that I saw within these ultra successful people are their work ethic and how they manage their time, right? Literally, like even the few minutes that I spent talking to people like Tony Zhu, who's worth a few billion, right? His company is like a $30 billion company. Or Tom Bilyeu, who's also a billionaire, sold Quest Nutrition.
Wow.
I realized, okay, well, you know what? These people really value their time, but they also want to give me access. So what that tells me is when you are granted a lot of success, you have to find ways to, of course, respect and prioritize your time, but to also pay it forward. So whenever people reach out, even like for this podcast, for instance, I was so excited for this podcast because I'm like, yo, I'm about to meet another really cool entrepreneur, and maybe I can share some knowledge or some insight with yourself, with your audience. And that's my way of paying it forward to the next person that this might inspire to be like, yo, you know what? I could do this too. I'm going to take that next move, that next action, right? And so yeah, man, I think the biggest thing is like, got to stay humble, got to stay grounded, and be relentless with your time and how you spend it.
Exactly, makes sense. And what is your specific definition of discipline? And the reason why I asked that is because it gets taken out of proportion sometimes, to where discipline means, that means you have to have a routine. But that's not necessarily the case, because it can also mean that you need to control your desires, you need to control your anger, you need to control your mind entirely, right? Like, you need to stop yourself from doing this, that, and the third, right? So what is your definition of discipline?
Yeah, great. My definition of discipline is doing exactly what you tell yourself you're going to do at the time that you're going to do it. And it's as simple as that. If you tell yourself that you're going to do a particular task at a particular time, you have it in your calendar, just do it. Don't find reasons to procrastinate or to be late to it or whatever it is. If you tell someone that you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, do your best to stick to that.
Always.
If you're going to be late, give them a heads up. If you make time to hit the gym, show up, even if you're having like the worst day. So do the things that you tell yourself that you're going to do at the time that you're going to do it, and you could achieve anything that you want. It's that simple.
Exactly, makes sense. Now I know you recently moved down to Houston, right?
Yeah.
What's it like starting? It's almost like you're starting over, right? Because you don't really lose the connections, but it's just like you gotta kind of start brand new, make new friends out here, and it's a different environment. How have you been adjusting to that? How has Houston been welcoming you so far?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of my wife's side of the family here, so that's been nice. But that's like all in one bubble, right? So they live in the northwest side of Houston. But for myself, man, like I literally have a handful of friends here. I mean, you're one of them now that we met and we got connected. But yeah, it does in a way kind of feel like you're starting over, but I think it's a good thing, because like you said, you retain all of the connections and all of the network that you have throughout your other travels. I mean, I've lived in LA, I've lived in New York prior to this, but you also like just see things with a new light, So I'm just like so excited for like all the cool people that I'm going to meet, now that I'm in this city that is literally the 4th largest city in the world. It's literally the 4th largest city in the United States. Has some of the most millionaires here, has such a robust and diverse ecosystem for business, has all these cool car groups that you're part of, and and so yeah, man, I mean, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, dude, and that's the thing, man, is that that's why I love Houston as well. I don't think I'd ever move out of Houston, even though I've been here for a long time, I just never get tired of it,
Wow.
There's always something to do, like the next month or the month after. There's always things going on, events, and that's also why I think it's a good thing. It's a good opportunity for the people that do live here, is that, if you can go out and just go make connections with people and, figure things out, whatever industry you're trying to get into, right?
Yeah.
So, you might meet the next, your next investor right in front of you, you never know that might give you that next like push to get you to the next level, right?
100%.
So, how have you ever like worked with any investors before, or like was everything self-funded? Yeah,
so everything's been self-funded, apart from like some small business loans I took when I achieved a little bit of success. But yeah, bootstrapped. I've had investment offers, from several people in the past. I was also actively seeking investors a few years ago. But what I realized is like I want to build a sustainable business that isn't dependent on investors, so that when I have a proven product that's ready to hyperscale, I can attract the right partners to be on my terms, right? I don't want to just take money from someone that's offering it for them to receive a slice of the pie when they're not genuinely invested in the vision, right, or the mission, right? So I think for anyone that is seeking to raise funding, it's like go through the SBA, go through your local credit. Go through your local credit unions. I have so many friends in like the business funding space, but I only think you should take an investor on when there's a clear vested interest in your business that is also strategic, right? So it might make sense to partner with someone like Timlin Fertitta if you're starting a restaurant chain, for instance, right? Because in addition to capital, he's multi-billionaire. he can also give you his expertise and industry connections, right?
Yeah.
But you really got to be selective with who you partner with. But I think, investors are a great way to scale.
Investors are a great way to scale. Exactly. And that's one of the things, that we always talk about is like when is the right time to get an investor. And oftentimes the problem is even, I've made this mistake myself as well, is that we look for investors too much because we want to grow fast, right? We want to make the quick money, the fast money, right? And that could be good sometimes, but at the same time, what was the reason why we started this? We're sacrificing short-term gain for a long-term return, right?
Yeah.
So that short-term investor that you think is gonna boost you, I mean, your business is not structured to take on that kind of investment to deploy certain things, right? Like you still need to develop systems, you still need to develop all these different things before you can actually, get investors, right? So I see this problem happen a lot, and which leads me on to my next question as well, is how crucial do you think credit is in the entrepreneurial world?
Very important, right? If you live in the 21st century, you've got to leverage credit to a certain extent, right? And so my recommendation is, even before you're 18, ask your parents to add you onto their trade lines so that you can start building credit history, right? Like the issue that I had the day I turned 18 was credit card companies want to lend to you based on your credit history and your credit score. But you've never had credit before. How are you going to build your credit, and how are you going to have a favorable credit score, right? So I was lucky enough to get a $500 credit card from US Bank the day I turned 18. And ever since then, I'm just building my credit. I made dumb mistakes, like not having like auto pay on for certain things and having missed or late payments. Made other dumb mistakes like maxing out my credit cards to run my business and keep my business afloat, right? And all these other things, but I could proudly say now, like my credit's at a point where I'm really happy with where it's at, and it's really important to have credit, especially in the U.S. economy.
Especially in the yeah, exactly, man. And that's the thing is that sometimes we look aside and we're like, oh, you know what, my credit's already messed up, and we did a podcast with somebody who does credit repair, for example.
Yeah, very cool.
And he kind of talked about how crucial it was to have credit, and if you've messed up in the past, it's so easy to get it removed, because there's somebody for everything,
100%.
And that also that ties into business too, that if there's any kinds of problems in business, there's always somebody to fix them, right? And there's always somebody to play that key role in your business, right? And on that topic, when was the point that you realized that you need to hire employees? Was it after you got a bunch of clients, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, at first it was just like me and a couple of my friends working together. They're helping me out. I was giving them some money here and there. But it was when I realized that I need to buy back my time. And that's also another great book. Shout out Dan Martell. Buy Back Your Time is such a great and fascinating principle, but it's essentially you calculating how much you make an hour and then being willing to pay at least a fourth of that to replacing someone, right, to do your task for you. And so the moment I felt that I'm feeling too overwhelmed with all these customers, that's when I decided to hire my first executive assistant. And that was a great decision because, it didn't work out with them long term, but I was able to go through the hiring process, get a feel for them, set key KPIs and objectives, and ultimately, I realized the only way to scale the business is to scale my time. We have the same 24 hours that Elon Musk and Bill Gates do. That's the reality. But the difference is they have tons more leverage. They have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people working on their dream and their vision every single day, right? So that's when I started really just focusing on hiring. And the moment I started recognizing and hiring the right talent, that's when my business started scaling and exponentially growing. So when you hire, you need to really look for people that are invested in your vision and people that have skill sets that you don't.
If you were to go back in time and to change anything from the decisions that you've made as a young entrepreneur, would you change anything?
Man, the only thing that I would change is I would be a little bit more present and really enjoy the journey and savor it more, you know, because it flies by.
Yeah.
And one thing I realize is like the more success that you acquire, the more boring it gets, because what interests me more than success itself is the process on how you achieve that success. So that's what I do every day now. I like to really just slow down and enjoy the process more.
Yeah.
When it sucks, I enjoy it. When things are amazing, I enjoy it. And that way, you never allow your circumstances in business to define you. Instead, you're always just enjoying yourself and from the lens of abundance.
Yeah, makes sense. There you go. And what is the best piece of advice you've ever received throughout your years? The ones that hit you the most.
The best piece of advice, I've received a lot of great advice. I would say one of them is be impeccable with your word, right? And that's really, to me, that means being very true to yourself. If you're going to tell yourself you're going to do something, going back to my definition of discipline, do it.
Yeah.
Be impeccable with your word. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And do you have any last words for our viewers? We are a group of young entrepreneurs on the podcast we're all trying to make it, you know, and
I love that.
Everybody has their own journey, their own way, their own path. If there's any things you want to say to us, we'll take it, man.
Definitely. Just go all in. Go all in. Don't look back. Burn all ships and just go all in.
Just full force. Yeah,
and that's it, full force. And don't hesitate to reach out. You know, I'm sure my out will be on the bottom somewhere here, but CEO Kawser, if you need any advice or any guidance or anyone that I can connect you to, any way that I can help, feel free to shoot me a follow and shoot me a DM. Happy to help.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you guys for coming on the podcast. This is Ubedi 100 with HighLine Executives. I'll see you guys on the next one. Adios.